Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a warm afternoon at the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Dan Moulthrop, Chief Executive here at the City Club and a proud member. So, as it turns out, cybersecurity has turned out to be a pretty big issue this past week. Just 1 week ago, we saw the first White House Summit on Cybersecurity and Consumer Protection held at Stanford University. The goal of that seems to have been to build alliances on cybersecurity between the government and the private sector, and it's not hard to see why. Target, Home Depot, Anthem, Sony, all victims of hacking, all incidents in which personal information of Americans got into the hands of criminals. At that event, President Barack Obama said, quoting here, "It's one of the great paradoxes of our time that the very technologies that empower us to do great good can also be used to undermine us and inflict great harm." After that summit, President Obama signed an executive order that urges companies to share cybersecurity threat information with one another and the federal government. Still, questions remain. And the question isn't, is our personal information safe? We kind of know that it's not. The big question is how to make it safe, or at least more secure than it is. Our program today is a little different than our standard forum. First, we're delighted that we're going to be hearing from Joseph M. Demarest, Jr., Assistant Director of the Cyber Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, on emerging cybersecurity threats. After that, Rick Jackson of IdeaStream will moderate a panel conversation with Mr. Demarest and leading information experts in the fields of healthcare and banking. He will introduce them. And finally, we'll have our traditional City Club Q&A, all in less than an hour. Amazing. A veteran of the FBI and a law enforcement officer from his days in the Sheriff's Department in Florida's Hillsborough County, Mr. Demarest has worked a variety of investigative matters, including counterterrorism, white-collar crime, organized crime and drugs, violent crime, and foreign counterintelligence. He was appointed Assistant Director of the Cyber Division in June of 2012. I present, on behalf of the City Club of Cleveland, Joseph M. Demarest, Jr., Assistant Director of the FBI Cyber Division.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dan, and it's a pleasure and actually an honor to be here at the City Club, and the invitation to come and speak at lunch with you. And coming to Cleveland from D.C., I was enticed to come this way because they told me it would actually be warmer here in Cleveland than it would be in D.C. No one told me to bring a hat either, and when you're follically challenged, it might have been a good move. And Dan, just going and look at the mural there, you know, I instantly when I looked up, it in white dudes aside, but it looked like FBI headquarters. We're all pretty much shaped like that, robes, fireballs, Lady Liberty. Anyway, so I thought I'd take the time. We'll talk about the major cyber threats facing the country today, all of us, I'll say. We'll talk about what the FBI in particular is doing about that. When I say the FBI, and I should say at the start, this big one team, and Dan referred to it, in talking about how industry plays a key role. It's not only government, U.S. government, it's foreign partners, industry, academia. You can imagine all the pieces that have to come together in this space. And as we talk, we're really at the really beginning stages of how the country is going to respond to this. Some refer to we're in the basement as we build out, right, and working to the second floor. How are we as a country with industry going to react? Because they're attacking you, right, primarily. They look at government too, don't get me wrong. But you are the main target, and depending on what actor set we refer to, clearly, and for different reasons, right? For intelligence purposes, this is espionage, this is for some competitive advantage. And the main actor sets primarily 5, the way we break them down. Cyber terrorists, number 1. And we track them very closely, interagency working groups or groups, action groups. I hate to refer to anything as a working group, just connotes something that we don't ever come to results. It's action group, exclamation point. We want to make sure that we're always moving and accomplishing something against, as we call them, the adversary. Hezbollah being probably chief among them in skill and tenacity and size. Hamas, another major group. Then you see a lot of these other actors, Cyber Caliphate recently, right? Team System DZ that hacked into U.S. Cyber Command's Twitter and YouTube account. So they're doing, and it's low level, right? It tends to be website defacement, it's hacking into Twitter and whatever, but they're looking for, right, the skill, the tools to do more. They see the advantage of actually doing attacks in this space and what it causes, right? Threats via Twitter about, airliners and potentially bombing them and the like, and what that causes us as a government to respond to, and airline industry in particular, what do they do? And they see so great advantage. But internally, the FBI, working with colleagues in the intelligence community, here within government, within the U.S., and certainly abroad, how we as a broader group actually track many of them around the world and watch to see them looking for additional skilled personnel, right, or people to actually do things on their behalf, and the tools. Obviously, they need to do that. We can teach probably anyone in this room, any layperson in this room, within 30 minutes, and with tools that are readily available on the internet today, to become a hacker. Maybe not a proficient hacker, maybe somebody we could easily catch, and we claim you as a stat. But anyway, with that being said, I have fuzzy handcuffs for you. Next, nation-state actors, right? And there were many, and you're very familiar with those out of Asia that we've worked recently. Sony, North Korea was a major attack on a commercial entity. And they're in it for different purposes that we've seen. Actors out of Asia, as you've seen, a lot of attacks in the healthcare industry recently, through the spectrum. Clear defense contractors, right? Government and the like. A lot of information being, exfiltrated and processed and then potentially used against us. In the form of recruitment operations, human operations. They may steal information about you, your family members, and then develop campaigns around that to actually co-opt you as an individual who may have high clearance or otherwise with the government. You may be working with an institution or a contractor that's doing work on behalf of the government to get to you, to get to the, the ultimate goal of getting to that particular piece of technology they're interested in. I'll say some of the actors out of the Middle East, different reasons. It's about CNA, attack. It's about understanding what we and how we defend ourselves. We saw the attacks against the financial sector, right? Many of the major banks, 2012, 2013, DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks, overwhelming their publicly facing websites. So they learned a lot from that, and we have seen each actor set, Middle East, those emanating out of Eurasia, and Asia evolve, right, their tradecraft, evolve their skill, getting better at what they do. Every time we take a step to counter, right, they counter. And I've said this in different settings, and last night was a great dinner conversation with the Citizens Academy Foundation and InfraGard here, sponsored through the office and our Citizens Academy team. As they do that, I had a senior moment there for a moment, so I forgot what I was going to say. See, everyone who's over 50, right, you looked at me and said, okay, I've been there, that, just move on. All right, next major set, so the next major group, so I'll act like it never happened. That's what we do when you get older. And it'll come back to me, and I'll flash back to it, and I'll cover it, certainly. But so a next major group, major cyber criminals that are out there, doing it for gain. And we've seen many, and obviously working against us, against a lot of different commercial victims, to steal your PII or personally identifiable information, credit card information and the like. And let me just say, everything they steal is sold in the data market, right, online, dark web. Everything is sold. So even the pre-attack things that they do to map your network, they'll take that and sell it to the highest bidder. So it's just, again, it's a market, a vast market, right? And anyone's willing to pay for, different things. There's prices offered for credit card, new whatever. I'll say health records too. That's that's actually fetching a significant price for a full file on you, your family members, and the like. So we have in our response, I'll talk about it more fully, but we have a group that's all they do is focus on the major cyber criminals around the world that we know of today. And they rely on shared services, so bulletproof hosters, AV checkers, so they check their malware with people who understand that they're checking their malware to see if it's caught by Symantec and McAfee and some of the other major AV companies, right? It's just natural. The money launderers, right? We see this virtual currency and how they actually help and assist some of these organizations. Hacktivist community, another fourth, right, major group that we track today. Anonymous, we're all very familiar with, right? Any major activity that happens, throughout, I'll say the U.S. here and abroad, obviously, they pick an issue, and then Ferguson PD, and I use that as an example. The shooting of Michael Brown there was an operation that was actually suggested by anonymous-related groups, Op Ferguson, and then they targeted Ferguson PD with distributed denial of service attacks. They doxed or collected all the information about senior police executives, posted all of that online. So you can see some of the officer risk, the challenges to not only the executive but the department itself, because they're posting the officers' information along with families' information as well. So you can imagine what that may feel like as you're in a position of a public trust and you're trying to do things that are right and good and just for the community, and then others are looking at you. And remember, when you're online, everyone can see you from around the world. It's not just here in the U.S. And if there's advantage to be taken, they see your social security number, your date of birth, or whatever it may be, your home address. That opens us all up to risk in the sense that you could have someone who maybe not necessarily on balance take that information and individually take actions against. And lastly, for industry is the insider. Certainly for government, right? We have robust programs in place today to identify the Snowdens, if you will, in government. And certainly in industry, you'll have, it could be the accidental insider, someone who just opens up on a suspicious link or email, or it could be the more malicious, right? Someone looking to do your company harm. Take whatever, product or source code that you're working on for a new piece of technology, or do something a little bit more malicious and delete or damage, internal systems or data so you can't reclaim that. So, and many of you, I think, have programs in place today, and the FBI has a robust program and offer it too. So there are suggestions that we can make to companies in that space. So what is the FBI doing about it? So 2, 3, 4 years ago, 3 years ago now, Director Mueller kicked off Next Gen Cyber. That was for the FBI to really get focused on those most significant threats facing the country. And to get this division, Cyber Division, which I'm responsible for, focused on intrusion work, nation state, and criminal. That's what we do today. We have today 56 offices across the FBI. Each office has its own cyber task force. All the information that's garnered or developed there is fed back, or at least shared with FBI headquarters, the National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, where it's assimilated. You can imagine you have several teams working on different cases or projects, but it's got to be coalesced and then in working with the community, I'll say, with NSA and others, and how we correspond, and certainly at the ground level, and this is what is definitely needed as you work in this space. You have to have the interaction with industry. The victim company wants to see somebody there when they want to see us. And again, I was reminded when I was out in San Jose last week for the President's Summit that when it's an emergency for them, that's when government needs to be there. When it's 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning, it's not that government waits until Monday to shows up or Tuesday when it's convenient. We have to be there when partners need us. Now, partners. There's a lot that goes in behind it, and I think we're starting, right? I think there's some good relationships we've created with industry on the whole. It comes back to trust. It's all human nature. These big, broad groups and how we share, I think, quite frankly, is going to be smaller groups of trust at first. And I described it last night. It was almost as if a chain link fence, and how then you chain or link all these separate groups together. And government's role is to provide the intelligence, the information, to help you better defend your company. The FBI has been described as a law enforcement organization, proudly so, but we are also, right, we have dual authorities, national security and criminal. We have discretion when it comes to actually working something or a case. You in private industry may be faced with something, you're afraid to come to government, or the FBI in particular, because, they'll come in, it's collecting evidence, we'll be on the stand someplace, somewhere, swearing out, a process or a complaint against a certain nation state or otherwise. That is not true. We work with several companies today, have no interest in prosecuting anything. However, they provide the information to the FBI, right, for the reason for us taking that information, sharing it with others in your sector or more broadly, to better defend the nation. Because what's happening to you could surely happen to partners left and right, or someone in your sector, and let me say more broadly, outside of your sector. There's been great cooperation you've read about with Sony in particular, a model, a lot of learning that's gone on over the past 3 years. Sony within hours notified the FBI. We were on ground, LA, we have experts out there for forensics and also from an operational standpoint, or operators out there. They're able to engage with Sony's team along with FireEye, who was brought in as a managed cybersecurity provider. On ground, can you imagine what that team looks like? You have government sitting there, the victim, the managed cybersecurity provider, what they're learning from the forensics, right, as they go through. Remember, Sony went down. Their network was completely taken down, some of it voluntary, and then it was a step-by-step. They had to go through each box or machine when they were there. But as they learned things, they were able to provide it to the FBI agent who was on ground, run it through. We actually forward deploy. We have classified networks that we use, but we have developed a system that we can actually forward deploy and have it out there with the victim company. And what that means, it cuts down on time, right? We would iterate in the past. We would get the information, it'd take us time to process, then come back out. Everyone's familiar with government. We're trying to turn that where it's more high speed. So as they gave us information, we're able to check it very quickly, provide information back, because it's about that. You give us information, it's not going to some big black hole someplace, thank you very much, and never talking to you again. It should be where, thank you for the information, we've taken that, and now we come back to you. Here's what it meant. This is what your information led to. JP Morgan Chase, there was different articles about JP, another phenomenal relationship. They provided information early on in the investigation and allowed us to work with the other, I'll say, major banks in the financial sector to see if they were seeing the same problems, right? The same attackers, either in their networks or trying to get into their networks. But it comes down to that, right? We've got to stop for a moment, right? Understand this is not some competitive advantage to have these indicators and not share it with anybody else. And that's what we need to do, I think, wholly, with government, private industry, come together, understand each other, right? And again, a visit out in San Jose last week, again, was very telling, where, at times we talk past each other, not fully understanding from each side's perspectives in what we're facing as a government, right? And what they're facing as a major global, corporation, and working that out. But there's got to be ways that we can actually work with each other, and understanding what those lanes are and what the information needs are by government and what needs are by industry. Private industry. Number of efforts by the Bureau today through the InfraGuard program is very vital. DSAC, Domestic Security Alliance Council, also very vital. But it comes down to this daily interaction. You could be sitting there as a firm, you're not really sure, or I have no contacts in government today. I don't know who to reach out for. And if you look at me and you don't know me, you're probably the last person you'd approach, right? Because I have this look. It's dark. I say it's chiseled good looks, but people say, you look scary. I don't know. Crunchy on the outside, soft nugget inside is what I say. Anyway, but you've got to, so no matter how scary we look, right, because we do come buttoned up, shirt and tie, there's got to be a way that you can actually come to us and we start having a discussion. And it should be over coffee, blue skies, puffy white clouds, when things are okay. Not on a Saturday when you're trying to find somebody, right, to respond to you and we don't know you quite yet and we're trying to understand what's happening. We are often, in working with the community, told about certain attacks against some of you and some of your organizations. It's our job and duties to make sure you're notified promptly with information you can actually do something with. And not coming to you and telling you, you've got a problem, everything else is classified, can't talk to you, bye. Right? Because we just leave you in a state of, okay, that was completely unhelpful. And you've got your whole organization now spun up, right? That there's a lot of concern. The Bureau, FBI, was on our doorstep. We got a problem, but we don't know. So our commitment, we work very closely, and again, I harken back to the banks, but we've done it on numerous occasions. You as a company, if you're impacted, we know you are, we're coming out to you, and if you don't have clearances, we're going to read you on for the day. So what that means is you sign a form, right? You promise me your firstborn, your dog, goldfish, no cats, okay? No cats. I'm a cat lover, but from afar. But with that being said, but we read you on, so we not only give you the indicators, right, often classified, potentially, but the background. Who's attacking you, why we think they're coming after you, right? And then this way will help you because it gives you context and you know why and potentially what you need to protect. We have found some companies out there, great patriots who've worked with us in the sense that they allow us to work with them and establish environments within your network so we can understand, watch the actors do what they do. It's great risk. There's a lot of discussion that happens internally with us, but see that, and it gives us the ability to study the actor and then take that information, the indicators and things that we see, and share it with others. Last thing is the plan. If you don't have contact with us, I suggest you establish, but internally have a plan. And that plan should include all the incident response pieces within your organization, your general counsel's office, definitely lawyers. How many lawyers in the room? I love all of you. I'm just going to hug from afar. You need to be involved because a lot of things we'll decide as operators are all good, hunky-dory, but the attorneys, and looking out for the firm or for government concerns, will bar certain things. And we have found, in sheer brilliance again, with some of these major hacks we've seen, Sony, Anthem, and others, is a commo or public affairs team, communications team. We've learned a lot and seen a lot, things that have worked for companies and things that have not worked. And I'll end on this. If you think that you're going to, well, number one, we're all going to be hacked. And just, we're actually talked about creating a victim support group. Hi, my name is Joe Demarest. I've been hacked 4 times. This is my 5th. It's going to happen. But listen, for the CISOs in the room, it's going to happen. And really getting C-suite comfortable with that, it's going to happen to us. It's just what we do when it does happen to us. Communication is key internally, right? Internal comms, and externally. And working with us, I think we can kind of give you ideas, in that space that we've seen work. Because you will find somebody in your organization won't wait, right? They'll talk to a friend who talks to a friend who will talk to a reporter. And then before you know it, right, it's on the front page news, and then you're fighting a fire. And there's no managing that message. The best you can do is start at the beginning. Try to manage as best you can. Take the appropriate steps. Take care of your customers, right, because they'll be most concerned. But have a relationship. That's the thing. We need to talk to each other. So Steve Anthony's a great leader out here who runs the program, or at least the office here. Steve has pulled my bacon out of the fire many times. I'm actually in this position because of Steve. Actually got me promoted at one point and working with me 11:30 at night on my KSAs. I'm usually a man of few words and monosyllabic. But he says, I'm sorry, knowledge, skills, and abilities, it's a written thing that you have to do, a lot of prose, and Florida State, not University of Miami. But anyway, Steve helped me with that, and I'm actually breaking up your, I'm sorry, forgive me. But anyway, Steve, thank you again for I stand here before you because of you. Thank you. I'll stop there. I'll turn it over to Rick, sir. I think I went over my time, too. Forgive me.
That's quite all right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think we've learned some things already. We're going to learn some more if Joe doesn't break up another piece of the podium. But thank you. We appreciate that. There are others on the panel here as well. But I wanted to start by talking about some of you, because the FBI tells us that 100 million people in America have been hacked. So that means, look around your table. 3 of the people you're eating with, if not you, have already been hacked, if we use averages. That's a scary thought. That means probably one of us has been nailed. It just happens that way. One of you 4 has been nailed. So this is a problem that reaches into each and every home, each and every business, each and every law firm has a situation. So who else do I have up here with me? James Noga is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Partners Healthcare. That means you're an expert in the medical identity theft area. And given what's happened with Anthem recently and what that means to people here in Ohio, we'll certainly be talking about that as well. And Amy Brady is the Chief Information Officer at KeyBank. So thank you both for being here. Thank you, Joseph, for being here. Let's get started. I'm going to give him a chance to breathe for a second, if that's okay. Start with you, James. The idea that health systems can be hacked, not new to you, but probably new to a lot of us. You and I were talking before. Tell me what you told me about the value of obtaining my health info. Why would anybody want to know my health situation?
Sure. So Joe mentioned that selling things in the dark web, and typically personally identifiable information, maybe $2. Medical record starts at $50, can go up to $500. Why is it valued so high? First is you can do the basic issuing new credit cards, so what you do with PII, but also insurance fraud. So in terms of medical identity theft, in 2010 they estimated 1.4 million instances, 2014 1.84 million instances to a cost of $12 billion. So there's the insurance fraud, false claims. There's writing prescriptions for OxyContin and other controlled drug substances that can be sold on the street. There is actually having treatment under another person's name. So there's instances where people have gone to the Red Cross to give blood, and they find out they can't give blood because someone has stole their identity and reported a disease that doesn't allow them to donate blood. Yeah, so really the insurance card is very powerful. And then the most nefarious, and hopefully doesn't happen, is someone that would actually want to alter somebody's treatment and outcome. In the laboratory setting, people have actually hacked into infusion pumps and been able to adjust titration rates. So you already can see the thriller novel that's going to come out, or the movie, in terms of a nation state killing a head of a nation through hacking in biomedical equipment. So there's a lot of value.
That is frightening. The breach, I mean, it's, to say the least.
Feeling good now.
Yeah,
aren't you?
no, not at all. The breach in Anthem, they have 80 million customers. Was that a wake-up call to the industry? There but for the grace of God go we?
I'll answer quickly and then have Amy answer, because I don't think it's unique to healthcare. Yeah, the more they diagnose that instance, it was really getting a hold of legitimate credentials to access the database, whether that's through social engineering, whether that's through malware. So you read in the paper they talked about, well, the data wasn't encrypted at rest. Really didn't make a difference because they went in with full credentials to pull that data down. So the wake-up call is how important credentials are, especially where we have people that I would call privileged access, and how you manage privileged access to your databases.
Yeah, you're one of the top 25 banks in America, a truly big bank. So you have probably more defense out there, but that makes you a bigger target. So you have to be, I guess, always on top of what's coming next toward Key.
So, I think Joe said it very well. It will happen. So what are you doing to be prepared? Now, by the way, Joe, that doesn't make it easier in our roles, and it doesn't make you sleep at night, because it is our job to protect our company's assets, which is the information that we hold really dear for our clients. So it is critical that we are staying as current as possible with all the multi-layers of defense that we can put into play, while learning from our partners, like our friends at the FBI, around what is changing in the world, so that as we get better, unfortunately, so do these actors, and they get more sophisticated, and it gets more challenging, and so it's a constant, very dynamic environment for all of us.
But you can't spend all of your time teaching your people defense. What do you do right now? What does any bank do to help your people know when something is coming in targeted toward the financial industry? Because you're one of the pillars of America.
So we talked about this a little bit, and this is cross-industry, right? So the phishing attempts that are hitting all of us, and whether they be hitting your personal devices or your devices in your corporations, are getting more and more sophisticated. And even the best of us that understand what's happening are clicking on things we shouldn't click on, right? So it's not, you're right, it's not just educating. However, there is a component that all of us do own around educating our employees and our clients, quite frankly. For financial institutions, we do a lot of work trying to educate our clients on, are they protected? Are they keeping current on malware and all of the things that they need at their endpoint, so that when we interact together, we are then a safe ecosystem. So it's education, it's constant communication, and it is awareness. The last piece I would say is it is something that is quite personal, and all of us need to own. No longer can you say it's just financial services, or it's just healthcare, or it's just the defense industry. It's every industry, it's every individual that has to be aware of what's kind of happening and take it seriously.
Yeah. Can I follow up?
Go right ahead.
Because I think Joe's comments are really important. I think all of us 5 years ago, if we had an incident, we didn't want to share that information. It was a black mark, and we held it close, and who's going to sue us if they find out that we've had a breach? Now it really is open sharing, and I know the FBI, I'm in the Boston area, very cooperative, using what are called the managed cybersecurity service providers. We have one that's constantly looking at our network, but more coalitions and collaboration of sharing information. So there's a group in Boston, and they call it Tuesday. Every Tuesday, everybody sends somebody to a center, and they talk about what advanced persistent threats in that they're seeing. So that sharing is really important, because no company can secure their assets alone. It's impossible. They need the help of government, of other companies, and of other service providers.
Good point. And Joe, are there companies that do want to stick their heads in the sand and pretend it's not going to happen to us, or companies where you go to through whatever purposes you have and you found out something happened, you knock on their door and they really don't want to hear it?
Well, I think less and less so today, because I think they're becoming more comfortable actually interacting with government. Great story, CDC Southeast, I mentioned this last evening. We're tipped out by, I'll say, someone in the intelligence community there was going to be a hack, or at least there was targeting of a certain facility, Clear Defense Contractor Southeast. Clear Defense Contractor, very good on cybersecurity, decided they didn't need assistance. Within 24 hours or so, they're actually calling, saying that those same actors are now in their network. So we actually worked with the company for a period of about 10 days. They had taken that particular system off the internet. put it back on. The actors were back in within about 72 hours. Wow. Got a piece of what they were looking for. They form problem-solving teams too. So remember, there's sheer brilliance on the other side of the ocean, or the globe, actually facing and looking at. They don't fully understand what happened, but there will be a problem-solving team. How do we actually go back after that and get what we want?
I would add, though, in our industry, in the financial services industry, there is a huge shift in collaboration. If one financial services company is seeing something, it's very quickly shared between the chief information security officers, whereas years ago, that would not happen. So that's good. To me, that's a really good sign. A really good sign.
You and I talked about something earlier, the idea that there are brilliant people working for you as there are working for the other side, but there's not enough of them. So you'll have somebody at Key who will get snatched away by FedEx, and they'll have somebody get snatched away by PNC.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that all my teammates that are sitting here are not passing out cards.
Stay away from the government folks too,
as our information security team is here. But it is, so I'd say this to high school age and college age students all the time. If you want to get a really hot career, go into cyber information security and all the related fields and get that technical expertise, because the number of industries looking for that in talent has exploded. And so it is a growing field, and we are competing for the same talent, which makes it a little bit harder for all of us. But the good news is there is great talent out there. It's just getting more competitive to find it.
James, you talked about the dangers of losing our identities or losing our health. Dollars and cents, what does the health industry, the health insurance industry, think you're losing in terms of people coming in, tampering, selling?
As I said, the estimate last year is the only information I have, that there was $12 billion was monetized through medical fraud throughout the country.
$12 billion.
$12 billion, exactly. And this is a loss mostly to CMS and Medicare and Medicaid, where you see a good deal of fraud, but also in the commercial industry. I also want to comment on the talent is, we've started to aggressively go after the universities, because you're not going to find 15-year seasoned people in IS. Ends up, they're actually very smart people,
really good.
And they'll run through walls for you. So they're actually a good pool to tap in terms of some of the colleges and universities and their programs.
So that means you're both targeting younger people to bring into the industry, but at the same time, are there a lot of people who are entrenched in their ways, who don't get the new cyber life that we live in, who don't really measure up when it comes to defense?
I actually think it's the other way around. I think from a talent pool perspective, the younger talent is great. They come in and they'll look at things, they'll analyze things, they're eager to learn, so that's great. I think the difference in the generational gap that we see is that for those of us who may be of a certain age and older, we take this seriously. We take protecting our identity seriously. If you look at the next generation, like my children, who are who are digital natives, their definition of privacy is very different than our definition, and so I worry about that. And when we see young employees, they get a little frustrated when their desktop doesn't fire up like this, and it has to go through all the protocols that we're putting it through for security. Like, well, why doesn't it just fire up like my iPhone? So I think that's the generational difference we're seeing, and we're gonna have to work on that both corporately and personally.
So I agree. I think all of you probably share pieces of information here and there. We had a company from the defense industry that'll remain unnamed, but we had them come in and they actually profiled our company, but they profiled some people too. They went to their Twitter accounts, they went to their Facebook, and they said, "Here, I have enough information to recreate your identity and steal your identity, because your birth date was here." In terms of what they call knowledge-based resources, where it might ask security questions. I found out that you bought this car in 1980, and that's one of the security questions. So they can build profiles by really doing what's called a big data scan across the internet. And Joe, I don't know what you see in that space.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more of that. In fact, when we talk about these human-driven intelligence operations against us, I'll say USG employees, or more broadly, some in the community. So it's your online profile they'll use, right? They use social engineering to understand more about you, right down to using people, right, who know about you, who may interact with you, to learn about, you as a person or people that you're close to.
Yeah, we all give away far more than we expected to give away. I think maybe 5, 10 years ago, we are not the private people we used to be. So the other side is smart enough to analyze that, to use it against us. How do we stop it? You know, not as companies, as individuals. What can we do, learning from the FBI?
Yeah, so what I would first say is that, you know, we talked about spears and opening email. They are so much better today than they were 2 years ago. Before, it would be Chinese characters potentially, or something written in broken English. Today, it looks like a legitimate spoofed email. Attending the City Club's event today, I'm meeting some of you. Hey, here's my business card, and I won't think anything of it because it'll be 9 o'clock tonight. Get back in D.C., where it's going to be 1 degree below zero, by the way, and I'll be wearing a hat.
Oh, warm.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's so they're brilliant. So they keep on moving. But the thing is, once you think you've been compromised because it doesn't make sense. You need to notify somebody. I think that is the thing too. We tend to, I may have made a mistake. We're gonna find out anyway. So you might as well just broadcast it, tell somebody, and then isolate that device and don't use the account further.
Specific to healthcare, I mean, there's something, and I know that, they're like Chinese characters. Your explanation of benefits is reviewing that. You know, who is hitting your insurance accounts? You know, if you lose your insurance card, act like you lost your credit card and report it. Review your medical record. You own your medical record. You have a right to see it and review it on a consistent basis. You know, there's other things, emails. I know I've taken to personally, I actually enter a URL. I won't click on a link because often if you go behind that link, and the FBI folks know this and Amy knows this, you know, if you really look, the URL that's put up isn't a legitimate URL, but people tend not to look at that and just keep going. So, you know, those are important things that you can do. And be suspicious. I mean, you know, I grew up in Cleveland. I remember the people that were walking around pretending they were reading water meters and get into homes. Well, yeah, that people are suspect of, but for some reason they're not suspect of an email. And yeah, that's the keys to the kingdom.
So you're telling me the Nigerian prince didn't really leave me money?
No, that's right.
It'll take $5,000 first from you to actually get to that money, right?
Dan Moulthrop.
All right. And we'll send the FBI a invoice for this. I don't no idea what you did over here. It's remarkable. Chiseled, good looks. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're very much enjoying a Friday Forum panel discussion titled "Hacked: The Threat of Cybersecurity," featuring Joe Demarest, Assistant Director, Cyber Division for the FBI, Amy Brady, CIO at KeyBank, Jim Noga, Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Partners Healthcare, and moderated by my friend and former colleague at IdeaStream, Rick Jackson, host and producer. We encourage you all to formulate your questions now for our panel and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point so we can squeeze in as many as possible. We welcome all of you here and those joining us via our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, 104.9 WCLV, that's all IdeaStream, or one of the many radio stations across the region and country that carry City Club programs. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. Please be sure to join us on Friday, March 6th at noon as we welcome Evan Wolfson, founder and president of Freedom to Marry, for a discussion on the historical, political, and social evolution of marriage equality in the United States. For more information about that program or any of our upcoming or past forums, please visit us online at cityclub.org. Today's program is the Myron N. Crotinger Endowed Forum, made possible by a generous gift from Mr. Crotinger. We thank him very much for his support. And we welcome guests at tables hosted today by Excelis Technology Group, FBI Citizens Academy Foundation, Eureka Software, KeyBank, Medical Mutual, and Thompson Hine. We thank you all very much for your support. Our community partner for today's program is the Excelis Technology Group. We'd now like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club Q&A, our speakers on the panel, for our traditional City Club Q&A. We welcome questions from all of you, including guests. Holding our microphones today, our content associate, Teddy Eisenberg, and our volunteer, Spencer Kiesel. Our first question, please.
We actually have a question from Twitter first. Mike is asking, is there a movement for a national organization to standardize security of information, similar to what the National Transportation Safety Board has done?
Joe, I'll throw that at you.
Well, you know, I'll start with, so the President rolled out the Cyber Threat Intelligence Integration Center, which will be created next 3 months or so. Funding set aside, personnel staffing is being discussed today. That in itself is going to be more or less a clearinghouse for finished products across the interagency or the agencies that are working in this space. So we got a common picture on a given threat actor, and then indicators that are gleaned from that, shared with not only the FBI, but with DHS, U.S. Cyber Command, and then for us then to share further, right, with industry and partners in that space. So that's another broad step in coordination and trying to assimilate data from from a disparate field.
Are people who come to this country who have a limited knowledge of English, are they particularly vulnerable victims because they don't know where to go or what to do?
Well, I think we're all vulnerable. Limited, ability to speak the native language or otherwise. In Ohio, I speak New York, but I understand everybody here. No, I think there are different communities that are preyed upon. We see the elderly are preyed upon, those looking for housing are preyed upon. I was looking recently for a 2-bedroom apartment in Washington, D.C., and you go on different sites, and then I was targeted by a scammer. When we put up a certain amount of money for this apartment, I was actually tempted to write the check out. But you couldn't see the apartment in advance, and the apartment, as described, was a premium spot for a bottom, a dollar value. But even I was tempted, and we're all tempted, right? And that's the thing, is you might want to, as Jim mentioned, you might have to just stop, pause for a minute. Is this legit or not?
It sounds too good to be true.
It is.
Yeah, I think mostly they look for vulnerable populations, and that's I know a very general statement, but that's what they're looking for.
I've bumped into news stories about the desire of some of the technology companies to bake way down deep inside their products some pieces of code that really nobody knows about, and in particular that the national security agencies may not be able to penetrate unless the company allows them to do so. Do you have feelings, perhaps Mr. Demarest particularly, whether or not this is a good trend in the way of building intense defenses, or whether that compromises the ability of the nation to monitor what's happening?
Well, first off, I'd like a list of all those companies that are doing that, notifying government. No, I'm only kidding. So anything that makes us more secure, right? And maybe those companies in particular. They've all got to be thinking about this broadly, right? But there's got to be some balance to it as well, and understanding what we may need as a government or law enforcement entity versus what the company may need and trying to produce and do, to protect itself or a broader, maybe its clients. There's got to be discussion on something like that. But again, there is no requirement for industry to report anything to government, right? From an event to activities like that. I mean, it's being creative. It's creating something that better protects them as a company or their clients. So there's probably more to be had on that thought. I think the weeks, months, years to come. This is still developing. It'll be interesting.
Amy, I know that the banks have layers and layers of different kinds of defense. Many companies do the same thing for you, and you use them all. You're not endorsing any of them, of course, but at the same time, do you worry that they now know things about you? You've given them the keys.
No, no, we don't. I mean, we definitely use, so I want to comment a little bit. So one, it is important to have secure coding practices in your technology ecosystem, whatever that is for you and your company. So I think that's important. You have to be constantly looking whether you're buying things from other people or whether you're putting something into production. Is it secure? Does it have vulnerabilities? Is it ready to go into an environment that you can operate in the most secure fashion for whatever industry you're in? We do have partners that help us with monitoring, much like Jim said. And no, I don't. I mean, their job and part of the reason you choose them is they're experts in this field and they're able to see things that you may not see. And so there's very strong relationships there. So I don't worry about that. I worry about a lot of other things. I don't worry about that.
As we all should, apparently. James, any comment?
I only comment, and again, it's not specific to healthcare. I have talked to people in the defense industry that they're very concerned as to where you source your equipment. Not in terms of blocking the NSA's ability, but other nation states embedding things in chips and that give them visibility into what's happening in this country.
They look for the weakest link. So supply chain, you make a widget that's going to a broader component for the U.S. military. They may look to attack that company or that widget in particular, knowing full well that it's going to be installed at a later point.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to show you how hardy we Clevelanders are.
Oh, you are, Hardy.
Right. I work for the Anti-Defamation League. We do a lot of research of hate groups, all of which we share with the FBI, gladly. So I know how easy it is in some instances for our researchers to get into some of those groups. The question I have, because we're a 100-year-old civil rights organization, is what is the impact on an individual's civil rights vis-a-vis cybersecurity and all the great stuff you're doing?
Well, I think we take into account, right, the civil rights or, and privacy protections in everything we do. There's nothing we do. We have attorneys attached at each hip. Much of the authorizations that we need are provided by a court, whether on the national security side, through the FISA court, or I'll say through criminal courts throughout the states. But we're all at risk, I think, when it comes down to it. And the actors pay no mind to our civil rights protections, right, nor privacy protections. They'll exploit us to the extent they're satisfied. So, but from the government side, though, we take that, and I'm telling you, the regimes that are in place today to ensure we're not crossing that line, and the review that is done, there's no single entity within not only the FBI, I mean, broadly USG, that can do things unilaterally on their own without notification to partners or to a legal authority.
And the private sector takes that equally as deeply to heart as well, right, is protecting that privacy of the information. And so even when we share with the FBI, if there's an event happening, we're very, very cognizant of what are we sharing and how are we sharing it. I think Dan mentioned kicking off the work that the president has begun to kind of bring light to, and that's a lot of the discussion is kind of how do we protect the right to privacy, yet share the most important information to protect all of us and our country.
We take it very seriously. I don't think there's anything as personal as your medical information. And it's interesting. If you're breached, on a financial basis, it takes time, but you can fix it. It's really hard to fix when medical information has been altered just because of the connectivity and how quickly it propagates across different electronic health records.
And from the pursuers, from the FBI's perspective too, we're interested in the indicators of the attack, not the information, generally speaking, of what was stolen. Now, as we come across things that are placed on Payspin, or sometimes they're adding insult to injury. Not only stole it, now they're publicly posting it someplace. But when that is seen as then providing that back to the company so they can cross-check, is it one of their records that are out there? But generally the government and the FBI in particular are just interested in indicators of attack and not PII or otherwise.
Okay, let's go here.
You mentioned how you are working with smaller companies and clients to get them education on what they should be doing. How successful are you finding this education is in making them start to take the right precautions and to really seriously look at themselves as being at risk instead of just the targets of the world?
Yeah, I think it's very successful, but for us, it's one client at a time. So I can't measure that 100%, but we see the companies that do business with us appreciative when we sit down and talk to them about what we might be experiencing and helping them. I think the other piece we've all got to balance is the levels of investment required to protect your entity, and depending on what industry you are, depending on the size of your company, depending on the type of target you may or may not be, to the various types of threats that Joe laid out, you're going to have to vary that investment. So we also try to take that into consideration. But the fact of the matter is, I think it's one client interaction at a time. And unfortunately, I think the headlines have helped, as sad as that is, because people understand, hey, it is going to happen, and it may not just be the big guys that it happens to, right?
Comment on that. So that's one of my greatest concerns is really the smaller businesses, the smaller organizations that can't necessarily make the investments or aren't necessarily aware of the threats. And I think there's been several instances over the past several years of small physician practices in the 4 to 10 range where they've actually had their medical records locked with ransomware and said, you send us X dollars and we'll unencrypt your data and you get it back. They're just not prepared, and that's just not healthcare. It's also in retail, the smaller organizations in terms of credit card protection. And I'm not certain how we address that on a long-term basis without the help of government and setting some standards that can be easily adopted by smaller businesses.
And a hack is a gift that keeps on giving, right? So if you didn't invest appropriately or pay some attention to it, right, small, medium-sized business, PII is stolen, then you'd be facing lawsuits, right? Maybe from not only employees, but separately your clients and customers. You lose that base, there's a good potential these companies go under. So the things that really start having that discussion at the president, CEO level, C-suite level, do we have the right things in place? It may not even be with contact with government yet, but just understanding, are we doing the right things? Are we protecting the information that we think we have? Because if you don't, you'll pay for it later.
Somebody does have a ransom-like attack. If they come to the FBI and say, my information's been stolen, do you have technology that can help them recover? Can you tell them where to go?
Yeah, so recently, Game Over Zeus, and it connected was a crypto locker, and crypto wall was another big thing. So crypto wall is attacking major companies and locking up drives or servers, encrypting the information, right, and then threatening or ransoming the information of the keys to unlock it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some companies paying because they're not backed up appropriately, right? They don't have access to the information to restore it. We have done, it was a major operation, it was a Russian actor was responsible for the crypto locker, and we were able to garner or collect some of the keys that were used to lock up, right, or encrypt certain victims' computers and provide those keys back. But once it's encrypted, it's very difficult, right? And so I think bringing in the FBI in particular, we could pursue the actor and hopefully get to him or her, because there are some ladies out there that have taken to hacking for hobby or sport or a way of life. But there's a way to get to them, right? And then get to the keys that can potentially help you as a company. But we'll help you through that too. But again, it's all about backing up, and both Amy and Jim agree, but if you've got to have the information that's available and storage where you can bring it back up.
Okay. Let's squeeze in one more question.
Thank you again for your time. I had the opportunity last week to go to Pittsburgh and attend a cybersecurity session. And in Pittsburgh, they talked about the NCFTA. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how the private sector can work with the FBI as well as the NCFTA to help collaborate and keep information secure?
Yeah, so the NCFTA, what he's referring to as National Cyber Forensic and Training Alliance in Pittsburgh, it's the collision of government and private sector entities there. 5013C, they host the space. A number of different companies are part of that, share indicators and things they're learning. They have a way to anonymize that data, the indicators. Government, we have 2 units from Cyber Division actually embedded with the NCFTA today. Our SURFU is one, and then don't even ask me what the acronym means, okay? Cyber Initiative, some Resource Infusion Unit. Become cool names in government and acronyms. And then we have a targeting unit up there as well. But we work, and that's some of the greatest, I don't know if I mentioned, but Operation Clean Slate against the major botnets that are out there, web robots, prioritized by industry and government. And then we go after the botnet itself, the infrastructure, but also the actors behind it. So synchronizing enforcement operations with the operators. So you're not just knocking or taking down botnets, you're actually taking down subjects as well, because there's only a few of them out there with the skill and the level to actually pull these things off. We have found great value. Maria Vella, CEO there, has done some amazing work in expanding that, and some companies should consider. And that's a way that you can actually participate and actually work with government somewhat indirectly at times too. So you could be on site or you could, remote in.
Good quick answer. Let's do one more.
To the panel. I've been fortunate. I've worked in cybersecurity for the last 30 years. And the one thing I've noticed is banks, healthcare organizations, industries, we spend billions of dollars on hardware, billions of dollars on software, and training our people, yet we still seem to be lagging behind the actors. Are you seeing any indication that we're going to get ahead, or are we always going to be the tail wagging the dog? Thank you.
My view is there will always be new threats. Threats are being developed now that we are probably unaware of. And this is why it's so important to work with the FBI and other alliances at trying to find out what's going to happen next. Another company that I've had discussions with, I like their philosophy of they're going to get in. We need to figure out how to keep them from getting back out. And I know that's a very general statement. But the answer is our job's never done no matter what we invest. And so we have to adapt every day and look at new defensive or offensive postures.
It's about building the fences, digging the moat, guard towers, but on the other side, and we pay less attention to it, but in the FBI we do, it's about imposing a cost, right, for doing the things they do, no matter where they sit in the world. So until we start bringing that to life, because you can't patch the world. You know, we see it over and over, same companies being hit again, same actors, different actors, but you have to go after them so they know if they do this, I potentially could suffer. We had some great success against some actors out of the Eurasia, where arrests are happening, they see it and feel it, and it's communicated among this community. They're selling off their tools, right, or their botnets they control, and they want to get out because they've made a fortune. So it's about imposing cost.
Amy, Brady, last word.
I'd say the answer to that question is we're always ahead and we're always behind. For all of the reasons we just talked about, it's an incredibly dynamic space. And if you want to give me your business card after this, we'll talk about other opportunities. I mean, just all kidding aside, because we need more people like you wanting to get into this part of the business.
Okay. Amy Brady of KeyBank, James Noga of Partners Healthcare, Joseph Demarest of the FBI. Thank you all so much.
Rick, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this forum is now adjourned.